In this tutorial video, you're going to learn how to solve a solution, find a solution of a system of equations by graphing. And so I'm specifically going to show you how to do that in your calculator. You can also do that by hand. So my steps over here to the right are the steps that we went over in class, but I went ahead and wrote them down, and we're going to follow those just so you get used to doing that. The first step is to write each equation in slope-intercept form. And the purpose of that is so that we can put it in our calculator. It's also so that we can graph that easily by starting with our y-intercept and then using the slope to plot other points on that line. So for this first one, when it says y equals 4x plus 2, I know that slope-intercept form is in the form y equals mx plus b, where m is my slope and b is my y-intercept. So you would have to ask yourself, is this already in slope-intercept form? It is. So then just move on to the next one and make sure that it is in slope-intercept form. So the first thing that I need to do is get y by itself. So I'm going to subtract 6x from both sides. It's creating a zero pair. So I get negative 6x plus 4. Now, I can't have a negative y here. I need a positive y. So I'm going to multiply everything by a negative 1. And anything I do on one side, I have to do on the other side. So negative times a negative gives me a positive y. And then negative 1 times negative 6 gives me a positive 6x. Negative 1 times positive 4 gives me a negative 4. So now I have two equations. And they're in the form y equals mx plus b, or slope-intercept form. So from here, I'm going to show you how to do that in your calculator. So if you have been storing any values for x and y, if you're checking using your calculator, make sure you clear out your calculator first by hitting second, plus, 7, 1, 2, and that just clears out the RAM. So if you did store anything for x or y using Boolean algebra to do that checking like you could have, then it's going to mess up your graph because it's going to tell your graph that your x is actually a value and we want it a variable. So just make sure you clear everything out. And then the first thing you're going to do is go to your y equals, and that was the button I press up here. And we're going to type in both of these graphs. So this is my graphing all equation step. So I have 4x plus 2. And then my second equation is 6x minus 4. And then from here, you need to use your knowledge of domain and range to make sure that you can see these graphs on the line. I would suggest that you graph it first. If you can't see the intersection point, then you're going to need to manipulate your window. So I'm going to press graph. And as long as there's dots over here in this line moving up, that means it's still graphing. So this is showing that I cannot see that point of intersection. Now, if you notice, the point of intersection is not going to be in quadrants 2, 3, or 4. So when I set my window, I'm going to take that into account. So instead of having my x-min at negative 10, I'm just going to set it at 0 because it doesn't need to be negative. I'm going to put my x-max up to 20 and my y-max up to 20. And again, I'm going to set my y-max minimum at 0 because we don't need to see the negative quadrants. And then I'll go ahead and press graph. Okay, now I can see that these two lines intersect right around here. Sometimes that point of intersection is going to be a decimal, and that decimal we might not know. And so I'm going to show you a way to find that point of intersection without actually going to the table and looking for it. So this calculate button is what we're going to need to use. It's the blue word above the trace key. So we'll hit second, trace. And this allows you to do several things here in this calculate, but right now we specifically want to find that intersection point. So I hit second trace, and now I need to tell the calculator to do the intersection. And so you can either push the number 5 or you can scroll down to 5 and hit enter. I'm going to do that. Okay, and then we just follow the commands on the bottom here. So it says first curve, and somewhere around here, you're going to have your cursor on one of these lines. And I can't see it right now. Oh, here it is. So it's saying, is your cursor on that first line? And by saying yes, you just hit enter. Now you can see it jump down to that second line, so I'd again hit enter. And now it asks me if it wants if I want for it to guess, and I do because I want to find that point of intersection, so I'm going to hit enter, and it'll give you the intersection point, it'll give you the x value and the y value for that point. So at x is 3 and y equals 14, I have that point of intersection. And now I just want to double check. I know that sometimes I make mistakes. Maybe I made a mistake putting in one of these equations. It's always good to check. And I'm going to show you how to do that using Boolean algebra. And then we always want to write this in the form of an ordered pair. So if you go back to your home screen, you can tell your calculator to store 3 in for x and 14 in for y. So to do that, you would say 3 stow x. Make sure you always put the value first or else you'll get an error. And then 14 stow y. And you're just going to have to use the alpha key, and then that's alpha 1. And then you'll just type the equation. So it's going to be y equals, that's in second math, 4x plus 2. When you hit enter, if you get a 1, that means it's true. If you get a 2, that means it's false. So that means it's true. So that means that 314 is the solution to the equation y equals 4x plus 2. Now I'm going to plug it back into either one of these equations because they're both the same. I'm just going to use the original equation for this specific problem. And it's 6x minus y, and that should be equal to 4. And again, that equal sign is under second math. So when I hit enter, if I get a 1, that means it's true, or a 0, that means it's false. So 1 meaning true, that means that 314 is the solution for the equation y equals 4x plus 2, and the equation 6x minus y is equal to 4. So that is right, and I did check it, even if I use my calculator. So again, this was solving a system of equations by graphing, and you can do that in your calculator or on paper, and you're just looking for that intersection point. It's always good to check just to make sure that you got that correct.